The first explosion in Tessa Quinn's morning wasn't her alarm clock. It was the sharp crack of a broken heel echoing through the crowded street. She looked down. Half her shoe dangled pitifully, while the coffee in her hand tilted and spilled, splashing straight onto her white blouse, the one she'd proudly called the only thing that makes me look employable. The bus pulled away just in time to leave her stranded at the intersection, as a gust of wind sent her crumpled, coffee-stained resume tumbling through the air. Perfect. Great. The universe is messing with me again, she muttered, picking up the paper and limping toward the tall glass building gleaming with silver letters. Ward Technologies. They called it the Graveyard of Assistants. No one had lasted more than 2 months working for Julian Ward, the tech genius, self-made millionaire, and man as cold as marble. Rumor had it he could remember every line of code, every system flaw, but not a single name of the people who'd ever worked for him. And this morning, Tessa was here to interview, to become the next name on that list. She stepped into the lobby, trying to look composed. A blonde receptionist glanced up and asked, "Do you have an appointment?" Tessa smiled and raised her empty coffee cup. "Yeah, with Destiny." The woman's eyebrow arched, and just as Tessa was congratulating herself on the confident line, her elbow knocked into the water cooler beside the desk. The entire jug tipped over, pouring straight onto the receptionist's laptop. The screen flickered once, then died. The lobby fell completely silent. Tessa managed to whisper, "Mr. Ward likes strong first impressions, right?" Behind her, a woman's voice cut in, cool but laced with a hint of suppressed laughter. "I'm Mina Torres, head of HR. You're the 10:30 candidate, I assume?" "Yes, 13 minutes late," Tessa said, her tone lightly playful. "But I figured I should at least make an entrance," Mina chuckled. "Oh, trust me, you'll need more than an entrance to survive here." The elevator doors slid open, carrying them up to the 38th floor. The office was bright and cold, so minimalist it almost felt sterile. Everything was perfectly aligned: keyboards, pens, water glasses, all placed exactly 3 centimeters from the edge of the desks. Tessa let out a low whistle. "Looks like a lab designed for someone with obsessive-compulsive disorder." Mina replied softly, "Not the room, the man in it." And that man, Julian Ward, was standing by the window. Gray suit, hands in his pockets, his reflection in the glass adding an extra chill to the air. When Tessa stepped inside, he didn't turn around. "You're late," he said. "Traffic. And my shoes weren't exactly cooperating." "Shoes don't show up late," he replied evenly. "People wearing them do." The words sliced through the air, leaving a sharp tension behind. Mina gave Tessa a quick wink before slipping out, the door closing softly and sealing them in a silence so tight, even the ticking clock felt loud. Julian turned his chair and flipped open her file. "You were a freelance journalist, blacklisted by a newspaper after publishing an exposé on one of their major sponsors?" "Correct," Tessa said without a hint of embarrassment. "I just wrote the truth." "And now you think you're suited for the position of executive assistant?" "I think you need someone who tells the truth, not just someone who says, 'Yes, sir.'" For the first time during the interview, Julian looked up. His eyes were cold and sharp as lasers, cutting right through her thoughts. "Here, truth matters less than results," he said. "Then you're lying to yourself," she replied quietly. A pause. Then Julian laughed, a rare, short, unreadable sound. He closed the folder. "I don't need someone with opinions. I need someone who can get things done. Have you ever tried letting people work without suffocating them first?" Julian paused. This time, his eyes weren't just ice, they held a flicker of something else. Surprise, maybe. No one had ever spoken to him that way before. He reopened her file, skimmed a few lines, and stopped at the section titled Notable Articles. Identifying humans through flawed data, the thin line between technology and ethics. He looked up, his voice lower now. "You know more about AI than I expected." "I know that when you use it to judge people," Tessa said evenly, "you start to lose what's human in yourself." "Interesting," Julian murmured. "I'm stuck on an ethical AI project, and it seems you might be suitable for testing how long you'll survive." He placed a contract on the desk, his tone calm and precise. 2-month trial, no strings, no guarantees. Tessa smiled slowly. "Only 2 months? I've survived 3 firings and 1 article that made the entire internet hate me. I think I'll manage." Julian didn't answer. He simply gestured for her to sign. When the pen touched the paper, Tessa felt as if she were signing something far bigger than a contract, a new beginning, or maybe a disaster disguised as the calm smile of a man who didn't know how to smile. Before leaving the room, she glanced back. If you're planning to bet on how long I'll last, make it a big one. I don't like winning easy. Julian replied evenly. I don't bet, I predict, and within 2 months you'll quit on your own. Tessa stepped out, the door closing softly behind her. In the gleaming hallway, she murmured to herself, half amused, half defiant. 2 months, huh? Easy. Mr. Ward has no idea who he's dealing with. What she didn't know was that, in that exact moment, amid the click of her uneven heels and the coffee-stained blouse, she had just set in motion a chain of events that would shake an entire tech empire. Tessa's first morning at Ward Technologies began with a pop song blasting through the office, a place so quiet it could have passed for a funeral home. Every keyboard stopped clicking. Heads turned toward her. The new girl crouched under her desk, trying to plug in her laptop charger, accidentally hitting play on her personal playlist. The bright, unapologetic beat of "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" echoed across the entire floor. Someone coughed. Someone else nearly laughed. Tessa's face went crimson as she scrambled to shut it off. No one said a word, but everyone knew. She had just broken one of the company's unspoken rules. Noise was forbidden. Julian stepped out of his office without a word. One look from him could freeze air. "Miss Quinn," he said, voice sharp and precise as a paper cutter, "we don't perform here. We work." "Yes," she replied, "but working without music is like coding without coffee." The room held its breath. Julian frowned slightly, then turned and walked back into his office. 30 minutes later, Tessa decided to bring a little order to things. Julian's desk looked like an operating table, every object positioned with surgical precision. She stared at it for 5 full minutes before muttering to herself, he'd probably work better if the light wasn't hitting him straight in the eyes. So she turned the desk 3 degrees, shifted his pen slightly to the left, and gave the surface a quick wipe with a damp cloth. When Julian returned, he froze for a few seconds, the kind of silence that announced disaster before it happened. "You touched my desk?" "I just made it easier for you to breathe. You know, that light hits your retina at a terrible angle," she said matter-of-factly. "Thank you for the medical advice," he replied dryly. "But if I want something changed, I'll do it myself." "Then nothing will ever change," she murmured. He didn't answer, but his hand tightened around the pen until his knuckles turned white. At lunchtime, Tessa decided to understand the company from the inside. She logged into the internal AI system, the one designed to analyze employee mood based on email language. In the demo box, she typed, "Julian Ward is the kind of man whose emotional graph is a straight line." The AI automatically turned her sentence into a meme. A photo of Julian frowning with the caption, "Error, emotion not found." Tessa laughed and was about to send it privately to Mina as a joke. But 3 seconds later, every single employee in the company got a notification. AI has uploaded a new image to the #Fun Friday channel. The entire floor erupted in alarms. Phones buzzed everywhere. People glanced at their screens, then at Tessa. Julian stepped out of his office, his gaze landing on the main lobby screen, where his own face was plastered with the mocking caption. "Delete it, now. I thought it was private." "You just triggered the internal comms system to auto-broadcast a meme company-wide. Do you understand? Company-wide," someone whispered. "Internal shares just dropped 2%. 10 minutes later, an emergency meeting was called. Julian's voice was steel. "I want to know why I'm the punchline of the internet right now." Another executive muttered, "Error not found is trending on Twitter, Julian." Tessa swallowed hard. She knew she'd done something beyond repair. But amid the chaos, an idea flickered in her mind. "You shouldn't try to erase it," she said. "You should turn it into a campaign." The whole room turned toward her, as if she'd just lost her mind. "I'm serious," she continued. "Yes, people are laughing, but they're laughing because for once this CEO seems real, flawed, human, not a robot. We can spin this into a statement, Ward Technologies, where AI learns from human mistakes." Julian stared at her, unblinking. "You're suggesting I turn myself into a meme?" "I'm suggesting you turn humiliation into strategy. And if you're afraid to laugh at yourself, then you're proving the meme right." Silence stretched tight across the room. Then Julian finally turned to the communications team. "Prepare a new press release. We'll try her approach." The entire room froze in disbelief. Tessa could hardly believe her own ears. 2 days later, the headlines exploded. Ward Technologies launches Learn from Error campaign. CEO admits even AI makes mistakes, just like me. The stock rebounded almost instantly. One magazine wrote, "Finally a tech company that knows how to laugh at itself." Julian stood in front of the mirror, reading that line, unsure whether to laugh or to be terrified of the woman who had just turned disaster into victory. From that day on, something strange shifted in the office. Someone played soft music in the morning. A few employees started sticking funny quotes on their monitors. Julian didn't like it, but he didn't forbid it either. The place suddenly had a heartbeat. And at the center of it all was Tessa, the woman who brought chaos and an odd spark of energy that made everyone feel a little more alive. But for Julian, that newfound aliveness only made him restless. That evening, as Tessa handed him the end-of-day report, he spoke without looking up. "You're distracting the entire office. I need productivity, not a carnival atmosphere." Tessa crossed her arms, her tone calm but firm. "If the system worked, you wouldn't need me." He looked up then, eyes flashing with a mix of irritation and curiosity. No one had ever talked to him like that before. And in that moment, Julian realized he wasn't being challenged by her competence, but by the freedom she carried with her. That night, long after the office lights went out, Julian was still at his desk. An email popped up on his screen. No subject line, no sender. Ward Technologies is leaking sensitive data. The source is someone recently granted top-level access. Tessa Quinn. The glow from the monitor washed over his face. Cold, hard, but beneath the surface flickered something else. Doubt and the sting of betrayal. Outside, the wind slammed against the glass. Another storm was beginning. The next morning, Ward Technologies felt frozen in place. When Tessa walked in, every eye followed her. Heavy, guarded, cold. Julian was waiting in the conference room, a printed copy of the anonymous email in his hand. He didn't bother with a greeting. "You know about this?" She glanced at the paper, her voice steady. "I saw it, and if you're about to ask whether I did it, the answer's no." Julian leaned back against the table, his tone flat, almost judicial. "The company is under investigation. You're the only person with the same system-level access the hacker used. I can't ignore that." "So you'd rather trust an anonymous email than the person standing in front of you?" "I trust data. And intuition? Intuition doesn't run a company." Tessa let out a dry laugh. "Right. I'm just the risk variable in your perfect equation." Julian said nothing. He signed the suspension notice and slid it across the table. "During the investigation, you'll stay off the system. I'll contact you when we have results." She stood, eyes blazing, voice firm. "You really think I'm just going to sit and wait for you to uncover the truth? Trust me, I can find it faster than you think." With that, she turned and walked out. The door shut behind her with a sound sharp and final, like a blade. Julian remained still, that strange pressure rising in his chest, not just anger, but something hollow. That night, with only the low hum of the servers filling the office, Julian discovered the system was still being breached. Lines of code streamed down his screen like blood running backward, data being copied, access keys scrambled. He traced the timestamps and found something chilling. Exactly 1 hour before the first breach, there was an unread email from Tessa Quinn. Subject line, "Security flaw detected, needs immediate fix." He opened it. The message was short, sharp, unmistakably hers. The tone of someone who used to dig for truth in every corner. "There's a vulnerability in the secondary authentication code. If it's not patched within 24 hours, the system will be exploited." She had warned him, and he had ignored her. Julian left the office, driving through rain-slick streets, one thought pounding in his mind. He had to talk to her. He called Mina. "Where does Tessa usually go after work?" Mina hesitated, then answered, "An old bar down south. She plays music there at night." Julian gripped the steering wheel tighter. He built a company that trusted only data. And now the one person who told the truth was out there, singing in the dark. The bar was small, bathed in warm amber light and a haze of cigarette smoke. On the tiny stage, Tessa sat with an old guitar, her voice rough but haunting as she sang a song that sounded like a confession. Sometimes, to see who someone truly is, you have to lose every bit of faith first. When the last chord faded, Julian stepped forward. She saw him, eyes tired, guarded. "Here to arrest me?" she asked quietly. "No," he said. "I'm here to apologize." She set the guitar down and folded her arms. "I sent the warning yesterday. Did you read it?" "I have now." "Too late, Ward," she said, her tone sharp but calm. "Your system's already been breached." They sat down at a small table. Julian listened quietly as Tessa spoke, her voice no longer sharp but low and steady, carrying a kind of weary truth. "I used to be an investigative journalist," she began. "I once wrote an exposé on an AI corporation that was illegally harvesting user data. The The story cost them hundreds of millions, and it cost me my career. They sued me for defamation even though I had proof. No court wanted to touch it. She looked up at him. I thought you were different, but turns out you chose silence when it suited you too. Julian rubbed a hand across his forehead. I've gotten used to assuming everyone has an agenda. You're the one person I can't read. That's because I'm not trying to be read, she said softly. I'm just telling the truth. A moment of quiet stretched between them. Then Tessa leaned forward slightly. Do you think someone's trying to take you down? Yes. Who? Julian's eyes hardened. Leo Pierce, former co-founder. I bought out his shares last year. He's been looking for payback ever since. Tessa tilted her head. Do you have proof? Not yet. Then let me find it. Julian frowned. You don't work here anymore. I don't need a name tag to know when someone's being set up, she said. Whoever hacked your system isn't after the data. They're after suspicion. They want you to doubt the wrong person. I've seen this pattern before, back in that AI case. They didn't notice the man sitting in the corner, quietly watching them. When Julian stood to leave, the stranger dropped some cash on the table and slipped out, leaving behind a napkin stamped with a logo, Pierce Dynamics. Outside, rain had started to fall. Julian opened the car door for her. You were right, he admitted. Someone's orchestrating this whole thing. Tessa looked out the window, her voice low. Leo Pierce. His name's been popping up on multiple cybersecurity forums. He hires people to hack major competitors, then leaks false data breach stories to tank their stock prices. Julian turned toward her. You know all that because... She gave a faint, humorless smile. Because I still have contacts in the cyber investigation circles. When I got blacklisted from journalism, the only thing I had left was a network of outcasts, people like me. The car rolled across the bridge, streetlights glinting off the water below. Julian glanced at Tessa, and for the first time, his eyes weren't cold. I was wrong to doubt you, he said quietly, but I'm not used to apologizing. I don't need an apology, she replied. I need trust, and if you want to take your company back, you better start by trusting me. He gave a small nod. Deep down, for the first time, he felt something unsettling, fear of losing control, mixed with a dangerous kind of trust. When they stopped in front of her old apartment, Tessa opened the door to step out. I'll send you what I find tomorrow, she said. Don't ask how I got it. Julian watched her disappear into the rain. He knew. The woman he'd once tried to fire was now the only person keeping him from falling apart. And somewhere in the dark, a message was sent from an unknown number. He's starting to suspect. Prepare to launch Plan B. Signed, Leo Pierce. The next morning, just as she'd promised, Tessa sent Julian a detailed analysis. She had traced the hacker's activity through an intermediary server, one linked directly to Pierce Dynamics. Julian read every line, his expression shifting from suspicion to genuine respect. He called her into his office. You did all this on your own? Tessa shrugged. I asked a few old friends for help. No one works for free, but they do work for beer. You're really not afraid of them? He asked. I'm more afraid of silence, she said simply. At least when I'm investigating, I know where I'm heading. From that day on, they worked side by side. Two opposites in perfect tension. He was precise, methodical. She was impulsive, instinctive. Julian took notes meticulously in pencil, while Tessa scrawled across the whiteboard in bold red marker, Stop thinking like a robot. She often leaned over his shoulder, pointing at the screen. You're analyzing like a machine again. Try seeing it like a person. Hackers don't just break things, they send messages. Julian looked up, meeting her gaze. You always think everything has feelings. Because feelings drive actions, Tessa said softly, even the wrong ones. One evening, as they combed through security logs, Tessa's eyes caught on an old photo on his desk. A woman in a blue dress, elegant, composed, her beauty edged with frost. Is this your mother? She asked. He hesitated, then nodded. Grace Ward. She runs the family's investment fund. She wanted an heir, just not a son. She sounds like someone with high standards, Tessa said carefully. She doesn't believe in good enough. For her, there's only winning or losing. Tessa went quiet. She glanced around his office, sterile, immaculate, not a single picture or flower, only glass and metal and machines. Now I get why you can't stand being wrong, she murmured. Julian looked up. I don't have the luxury of being wrong. Yes, you do, she said gently. You just haven't tried it yet. One late afternoon, Tessa noticed an old piano tucked away in the corner of the office, its surface covered in dust. You play? She asked. I used to, Julian replied. Don't have the time anymore. Then make time, she said. If you're trying to teach AI empathy, you should at least try feeling something yourself. He let out a soft laugh. You always say things I'd never think of. She lifted the piano lid, wiped the dust away, and gently guided his hand to the keys. Here, just one note. The world won't collapse. Julian pressed down. A rough, slightly off-key sound filled the room, perfect but strangely human. Tessa tilted her head and smiled. Awful, but at least this time you were wrong beautifully. He looked at her, his expression softening, and in that quiet moment, there was no company, no code, no battle for control, just two people, learning how to trust imperfection. They'd begun to fall into rhythm. Tessa spoke. Julian took notes. She laughed. He watched quietly. The office, once filled only with the clatter of keyboards, now carried soft laughter, the occasional clink of a pen dropping, and every evening, the hesitant notes of an old piano finding its voice again. Then one morning, the glass doors slid open. A tall woman entered, wrapped in a pearl-colored coat, her presence sharp enough to make the entire floor stand. Julian's jaw tightened, his voice dropped. My mother. Grace Ward needed no introduction. Her gaze swept the room, stopping briefly on Tessa, like spotting an ink stain on a white sheet. So this is the new assistant? She said coolly. Tessa smiled politely. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Ward. Grace didn't answer. She simply handed Julian a folder. The merger contract with Foresight Group. The condition is that you publicly establish a personal alliance with their family. Their daughter, Lydia, is suitable. I'm not interested in a business marriage, Julian said flatly. This isn't marriage, Grace replied. It's strategy. So I'm just a bargaining chip for capital? Call it whatever you like, she said, tone like glass. As long as you keep the company. Tessa stayed silent, not daring to intervene, but Julian's eyes had hardened into steel. After Grace left, he sat motionless for a long moment before saying quietly, She's always believed my worth exists only as long as the company does. And what do you believe? Tessa asked softly. He looked at her, gaze heavy and conflicted. I believe that if the company falls, she'll be proven right. Then don't let her win, she whispered. That afternoon, Grace held a press conference to announce the merger. Reporters packed the room, flashes firing like lightning. Questions flew at Julian in a blur. Julian, is it true you're engaged to Lydia Foresight? Standing at the podium, the lights blinding, Julian caught sight of Tessa at the back, clutching a stack of papers, worry etched across her face. And in that instant, something inside him broke free. No, he said clearly, voice cutting through the chaos. I'm not engaged to anyone, the crowd erupted. Then who are you seeing? A reporter shouted. Julian didn't hesitate. He turned, eyes locking on Tessa. With her, he said. I'm seeing her. The room exploded. Cameras flashed like fireworks. Tessa froze, mouth open, no sound coming out. Julian stepped down from the podium, took her hand, and guided her onto the stage. He leaned close, his voice barely audible beneath the chaos. If I hadn't done it, the stock would have crashed. They need to believe I'm stable. You just turned me into your excuse in front of the entire world, she hissed. I know, but it's only temporary. Do you trust me? She met his eyes, voice trembling but firm. No, but I'll help you, because this company doesn't deserve to be run by your mother. Within hours, headlines flooded every screen. Genius CEO goes public with relationship, his assistant. The office was in uproar. Mina stared at Tessa, half panicked, half amused. Congratulations, you just made history, the first person to turn fake news into a PR strategy. Tessa exhaled, rubbing her temples. I can't tell if I just saved the company or buried myself alive. In the days that followed, they were forced to act the part, showing up together at events, sharing lunches, smiling for cameras. But when the flashes stopped, silence settled between them. One evening, as Tessa adjusted a microphone in the empty conference room, Julian watched her and spoke softly. You know what's strange? I don't think this feels fake anymore. She paused, then answered just as quietly. Then you should be scared, because I'm not sure it feels fake to me either. The office lights dimmed, leaving only the sound of the old piano echoing slowly through the space, a melody unfinished, fragile, but enough for two people who had lived by logic to realize there are some sparks no data could ever explain. News of the CEO assistant romance spread faster than any software update Ward Technologies had ever released. Every morning when Tessa walked into the office, she could feel the stares, the murmurs rippling just under the hum of keyboards. What did she do to get him? Who needs talent when you can climb? She ignored them, smiled faintly, and bent over her work. But inside, something small and raw kept burning. A wound with no name. Mina was the only one brave enough to approach. She set a cup of coffee on Tessa's desk. "Don't let them drag you down. They have no idea what this is costing you." Tessa gave a thin smile. "People don't want the truth. They just want a story that goes down easy." The day of the board meeting arrived, the conference room gleaming under bright lights like a stage. Grace Ward sat at the head of the long table, her white jacket catching the glow. Her voice was calm, steady, sharp beneath the polish. "Julian, I've heard rumors that your assistant holds unusual influence over strategic decisions. That's rather surprising." Julian said nothing, eyes fixed on the folder in front of him. Grace tilted her head, tone cooling to ice. "So tell me, is she a tool or an emotion?" The air froze solid. Tessa looked at Julian. She didn't need him to defend her with grand speeches. Just one sentence, one small truth to say she wasn't a prop. But he stayed silent. His hand clenched, lips pressed tight, eyes turning away. She smiled, a bitter, sharp curve of her lips. "Good question, Mrs. Ward, and it seems he doesn't have an answer yet." Grace shrugged, satisfied. "Then I suppose that makes things clear." Tessa rose from her chair. "I think they couldn't be clearer. I resign." A ripple of whispers filled the room. One of the younger directors blurted out, "No one walks away from Ward Technologies at their peak, unless she's afraid of being exposed." Tessa turned toward him, eyes bright and steady. "I'm not afraid of being exposed. I'm afraid of becoming someone who can't look another person in the eye. Like all of you." She gathered her papers, walked out, and the door closed behind her with a heavy thud. The sound of the first crack, splitting Julian Ward's perfect wall. Julian sat frozen, thoughts tangled, a flood of loss breaking loose inside him. But he still didn't move, didn't speak, didn't follow. Only when he saw the empty chair across from him did he finally understand how much his silence had just cost him. The next morning, the building's security alarms blared red. The internal system flashed urgent warnings. The ethical AI project had been compromised. Several confidential reports had been leaked, edited to look like damning proof that Ward Technologies was manipulating user data. The market reacted instantly. Stocks plummeted. Investors froze every pending deal. Julian stared at the chaos unfolding on his screens and saw it. The digital fingerprints, the precise misdirections, Leo Pierce's handiwork. Exactly what Tessa had warned him about. But without her, no one in the company understood the system's architecture deeply enough to patch it. Mina burst into his office, panic in her voice. "We need a statement now. The media's tearing us apart. Clients are threatening to pull out." Julian didn't move. His eyes stayed on the flashing monitor, his voice low. "She'd know what to do." "Julian," Mina said gently, "she's not here anymore." That afternoon, during a call with the investors, Julian tried to hold himself together. A small glitch in his presentation caused the charts to display wrong. He froze, stumbled over his words, something that had never happened before. The meeting ended in uneasy silence. Moments later, the message arrived. The merger was postponed indefinitely. When everyone else left, Julian stayed behind, alone in the dim conference room. The low hum of the air conditioner filled the space like static. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had once rested on piano keys as Tessa told him. Playing the wrong note is still playing. It means you're alive. For the first time in his life, Julian felt completely out of control. A week passed in silence. The press now called Ward Technologies a ship without a captain. Julian stopped eating, stopped sleeping, buried himself in unsigned documents and glowing screens. Then one night, as he scrolled through the company's archived emails, a new message appeared. No sender, no traceable ID. If you still trust people, you'll find your way back. He read it again and again. No name, no signature. But the phrasing, the rhythm, it was her. Find your way back. It was exactly what Tessa had told him that night when they spoke about her lost career. Sometimes, you only find yourself again when you dare to trust someone. His heart pounded. He reopened the security logs, and there it was. A section of the system's core code had been quietly modified days ago. Hidden, precise. The kind of work only someone with top-level access and deep knowledge of the architecture could pull off. She'd come back, silently, without recognition. Tessa had patched the breach and saved the data before it was destroyed completely. Julian leaned back in his chair, eyes closed. He didn't know where she was. All he knew was this. Everything he had built, everything he had believed in, had never truly been alive until she'd walked into his life. Outside, rain began to fall against the windows, and for the first time, Julian let it. No shields, no control. Because maybe, just maybe, this fall was exactly what he needed to finally learn how to stand up like a real human being. Julian left Ward Technologies that night for the first time without his laptop. He tossed his phone into the glove compartment and took only one thing with him: a printed copy of Tessa's last email. For 3 days, he'd called everyone who might know where she was. No one did. Until Mina finally sent him an address. "I'm not sure," she'd said, "but someone mentioned she's consulting for a nonprofit out in Eastbridge." He drove 2 hours through heavy rain, headlights cutting through the mist, until he reached an old warehouse district. One building glowed softly from within, its sign faded, windows fogged. Inside, warm yellow light spilled across the concrete floor. Tessa stood in the center of the room, surrounded by a small group of students, showing them how to design a digital privacy campaign. No heels, no blazer, just jeans, a loose shirt, and a face free of makeup. But her eyes were alive, lit with purpose. Julian stopped at the doorway, breath catching in his chest. He stepped inside. She turned. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was so complete, he could hear the rain hitting the glass, steady, unhurried, like the sound of a heart finding its rhythm again. "What are you doing here?" "To apologize." For what this time? The rumors or the silence? For everything. He took a breath. "I was afraid, not of losing the company, but of losing control. I thought feelings would make me weak." Tessa met his gaze, her voice low and deliberate. "You're not afraid of me, Julian. You're afraid of who you are when you're with me, because I make you feel." He lowered his head, her words hitting the part of him he'd spent years trying to armor. "You're right," he said quietly, "but I don't want to run from it anymore." She folded her arms, her eyes softening. "What is it you want from me then?" "Not to save me," he said. "To start over, with me." He placed a thin folder in front of her, the cover stamped with the words, "Project Echo, Open Ethics, Artificial Intelligence." "I want you to lead this project," he said. "Not because I owe you, because you're the only one real enough to guide it." Tessa looked up, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "So you finally understand what trust means?" "For the first time," he said simply. A few days later, they walked side by side into the investor board meeting. The room was thick with tension. Grace Ward sat in the front row, her expression carved in stone. At the far end, Leo Pierce lounged back in his chair, his lawyer beside him, both wearing smug, practiced smiles. Julian began, voice clear and steady. "Last week, Ward Technologies was accused of data manipulation. Today, we present proof that the breach was orchestrated by Pierce Dynamics." The lights dimmed. Tessa stepped forward, projecting the screen behind her. Lines of falsified code scrolling like digital fingerprints. She spoke with calm precision, every word cutting through the air like a verdict. The injected scripts were traced to a proxy server registered under Pierce Dynamics network. The breach wasn't theft, it was theater. A setup designed to destroy reputation and control the narrative. Her tone carried the same authority she once had as a journalist standing before a tribunal. Truth sharpened into a weapon. Leo shot to his feet. "There's no proof I gave that order." Tessa's smile was calm, almost kind. "You seem to forget. Your own AI logs vocal imprints on every activation command. And I have that recording." She pressed play. A clipped, unmistakable voice filled the room. "Push the data out. They'll turn on each other." Leo's voice. Clear. Cold. The room erupted in shock. Grace lowered her head, her hands trembling slightly. Julian turned toward Tessa, pride and gratitude softening his usually sharp features. "She's not just cleared of blame," he said firmly. "She just saved this company, and she saved me." Security escorted Leo out. Within hours, headlines swept across every outlet. Ward Technologies turns the tables, the most daring reversal in tech this year. But what stayed with Julian wasn't the headlines or the applause. It was the quiet moment afterward, when Grace approached him in the empty hallway, her voice breaking. "My son, I was wrong. I made you a machine because I was terrified you'd get hurt. But now I see. Feeling nothing is the deepest wound of all." Julian pulled her into an embrace, his voice low. "I don't want to win anymore, Mom. I just want to live honestly." A few days later, the company began to breathe again. The press conference announcing Project Echo ended with a standing ovation. Julian stepped off the stage, removed his mic, and made his way back to his office. There, Tessa was leaning over the espresso machine, sleeves rolled up, hands covered in foam. "You know," she said without looking up, "this machine reminds me of you. Complicated, full of buttons, and constantly breaking down from trying to be perfect." Julian leaned against the desk, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "No one's ever lasted 2 months here." Yet somehow you've made it impossible for me to last a day without you." She looked up, eyes glinting, a small, warm smile forming. "Then stop trying to." Afternoon light streamed through the glass walls, spilling across the old piano in the corner. The dust was gone. Julian sat down and began to play the melody Tessa had once taught him, this time steady, certain, every note alive with breath. As the music filled the room, Tessa leaned against the doorway watching him. Her eyes were warm, soft with something deeper than pride. He looked up, and for a moment, the light caught both of their faces, no longer divided by reason or restraint. Just two people who had finally learned how to trust, how to be wrong, and how to love through the cracks that made them real. Outside, the giant Ward Technologies billboard flickered to life with a new slogan, "The CEO who learned to feel."